I hold deep in muddy waters. You practically raise the dead. I don't think he's referencing the legendary blues man. Um, to be I hold deep in him becomes quite a surprise. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, you bastard. My name's John, and his name is Andy. Sitting here wishing on a cement floor, just wishing that I had just something you wore. I put it on when I go lonely. Will you take off your dress and send it to me? More of that later. But first, we're track to listen to, selected by Andy. Andy, what are you going to store for myself and all the good folks? And all the bad folks today.
All right. Well, everybody's under the umbrella. So strap yourself in, John, because we are going to be revisiting Tool today. And I'm going to have you check out a track by them that I think is very interesting, both from a musical standpoint and from a topical, lyrical standpoint. And it is called The Pot. So, 6 letters, 2 words, pretty simple. Go off, give this thing a go, and let us all know what you made of it.
Yeah, will do.
Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out your head. I hold deep in muddy waters. You practically raised the dead. Rob the grave to snow the cradle.
We're going to do that again very quickly. I just want to catch all those words he said.
Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out your head. I hold deep in muddy waters. You practically raised the dead. Rob the grave to snow the cradle, then burn.
Okay, so it starts with a cappella. It's quite high in its range there, I think. Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out of your head. So immediately you get this idea of hypocrisy. Waving your finger kind of sounds quite old school. Sort of judgy. I don't know how to say it, but I know that the other song I listened to from this album Andy gave me had religious context to it, and I think perhaps this does a little bit as well. It puts me in mind of tightly permed spinsters, and switching, waving their fingers. That sort of Christian charity. It makes me think of poison pen letters that are signed a Christian. Makes me laugh. Yeah, very interesting. I don't know how it relates to pot. He says you must have been out of your head. I don't know if that relates to the American word, the use of the word pot. I hold deep in muddy waters. I don't think he's referencing the blues legend there. You practically raised the dead. Not a clue. But at this point, these hand drums come in, I think, because I saw a recent thing on YouTube about different sounds that a tableau makes, and I think it's that. Sounds wonderful, whatever it is. But yeah, sounds really good. And then in comes the sort of bass, real sort of dirty sounding bass. It's a little bit of that sort of metal funk bass. And we're sort of away. So let's see how it progresses.
The evidence down. Soapbox house of cars and glass.
Noisy
So don't
notes.
soften your stones around. You must have been high. You must have been high.
to stop too much, but just that occurred to me then. So we get this slowly building up, and the instruments coming in one by one. The guitar comes in, and then we get a drum fill, which is the universal signal for transition into. So you think the whole song's going to kick off, but instead the guitars do that sort of twisting, buckling sort of sustained notes, and it puts me in mind of sort of like kites sort of stalling in the wind and not quite going anywhere. Really interesting.
Head up fast, so what you talking about? Difficult to dance round this one till you pull it out. Boy, you must have been so high. You must have been so high. Steel borrow, reversing your shady inference. Kangaroo done hung the jury with the innocent. Now your weeping shades of crimson in the cold elementary sip in your eye. And you pissed all over my black head. You must have been high. You must have been.
Not really getting the words anymore. Innocent. Something about lemon juice in the eye and pissed over my black kettle. I'm wondering if that's like a pot calling the kettle black thing. Black kettle pot. I don't know if that's a phrase that's used in America or not. This is just blighty. There's little touches here and there. There was emphasis certain bits of words with the drums hitting the cymbals. There's like little noises. There was like this snickering sound. It was like a rattlesnake that got alive inside the Bontempi organ. It was like, the overall sound of that guitar, that heavy chugga chugga chugga, is not one that does anything for me. I'm not that big on that sort of funk metal bass either. The other bits are interesting. Yeah, I wish I knew what a Scoobies was going on, but in terms of the lyrics, but it's interesting. The words again. Yeah, interesting. I have to say, of the three Tool songs that Andy's given me, um, this wasn't my favourite. I think there's something about that overall sound of that main guitar which just doesn't do anything for me. It feels more metal than the other two did. Um, so much so that I was thinking about this during that song. I was trying not to interrupt towards the end. Drummer's doing great work, but he didn't stand out as much as he did in the other two. I really, and that guitar almost dominated the heavy chugga chug, and it did sound very sort of bulk standard, metally, and not as interesting as intricate as Writing Two or that sort of weird, bizarre journey that went on with Parabola. So yeah, it didn't quite do anything for me, this one. It felt more straightforwardy. And bless him, he repeated the lyrics quite a lot, but I still haven't got a scoop as to what's going on. I got some idea about hypocrisy. There's a lot of waving the fingers. And you must have been high. And after, yeah, hot. Or sort of high as in high-handed. I don't know. Probably more to do with pop. But yeah, I enjoyed all the sort of weird noises that the guitar was doing, and that sort of wailing. There's a bit where it dropped down, and there's this eerie sort of almost wailing. Um, and I don't know why, but that always triggers to me sort of the idea of a battlefield after the battle, where there's just smoke drifting and maybe people making noises as they bleed to death. And then the drums, when they came in after that, sounded sort of militaristic as well for a bit, but that's probably just my looking at it through my lens. So yeah, I think there was bits in it that were decent, but overall not my favourite Tool song. I would like to know what the hell's going on, and then where is this kangaroo, and this lemon juice, and how they fit together with Mr. Muddy Waters. So we need to know more, definitely. So let's go back and chop it up with Andy.
All right, John, you have returned from giving the pot a stir. What did you make of it?
Yeah, interesting how the pot can refer to so many different things. I noticed straight away that the thumbnail was the same as Writing Two, which I listened to before. So this is obviously the same album.
Yes, sir.
10,000 days, was it?
Yep, you got it.
So this starts with Mr. Maynard singing a cappella.
Hmm.
And what I would say, with my limited exposure of his oeuvre, is towards the top end of his range, from what I've heard. Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out of your head. So in this opening couplet, we have this idea of hypocrisy. I know the other song that from this album that you gave me, the Writing Two one I just mentioned, that had plenty of religious context. And that kind of colours my thinking here, my instinctive reaction to this, that I feel like wave your finger, finger waving, is this kind of old school judgmental scenario within a organized religious. I don't know what it's like. I'm sure it's the same in America, but in Britain, it makes me think of this very parochial and provincial setting with spinsters with very tightly wound permed hair, twitching neck curtains, the sort of place where you get a spate of poison pen letters, always signed a Christian, which makes me laugh so much. They've got a fucking idea, have they? But anyway, yeah, so that's quite funny. Just with those first couple of lines, the idea you must have been out of your head, well, without developing a bit, so we'll circle back to that. There's a little gap, and then there's a faint ghost, not an echo because it precedes it, but
It's a reverse echo, right? Yeah.
So it's this ghostly track leading you on, as it were, of his voice, and then again him picking it up. And as he sings, the bass comes in and starts noodling. I hold deep in muddy waters. You practically raise the dead. I don't think he's referencing the legendary blues man. Um, to be I hold deep in him becomes quite a surprise. So not quite sure what he's on about here, but we get some really nice sounding hand drums join in at this point. And I think because I'd really literally in the last 3 or 4 days seen a short on YouTube where this guy explains all the different sounds you can get out of a tabla. And I think it's a tabla sound that we're hearing because it sounds really familiar to that, which is wonderful. And you get this very interesting, almost, it's not like water splashing, but poink to some of the bits where they hit the tabla on it, and others is just lovely sort of resounding hollowness to them. It's around about this time I realise I've been doing quite well with the lyrics for me, but this music activity starts to increase, and as it does, my grasp on any further lyrics starts to slip, go downwards at the time the music comes in. So we had a real fuzzy note enters and starts to rise in volume and mansplains its way out into becoming a heavy guitar riff as Maynard repeats, "You must have been high," which I guess would be another reference to pot, but in the American usage. No one really calls it pot over here. But yeah, we then get sort of gets the end of this sort of section, as it were, and then we get a drum fill, which is the standard international sign for transition in music terms. And it kind of, I expect the song then to sort of blossom forth in full tilt boogie, for want of a better word, phrase, sorry. But instead, it becomes more of a holding pattern as the guitar kind of squirms and buckles with these notes. And it's kind of, it reminds me of like a stalled kite in the breeze. It gets so much and just hangs. And it does that again, rather than going into full, expounding. We then drop down, and in comes that sort of, I'll call it metalloid funk sound of a very greasy bass. I then catch the narrative about what you're talking about, difficult to dance around. Yeah, I'm in the dark here. As Maynard repeats the refrain, "You must have been so high." So yeah, again, there's referencing to hot as in the title, but I also wonder whether he means high as in high position or high-handed or looking down on people as well. It could be. There's also these snickering noises at this point, which I suggest in the reaction sound like a rattlesnake loosening the insides of a Bon Tempi organ, going across, which are very interesting. The next section then comes in and feels much heavier with very strident riffs from the guitar. All I'm getting from the words here is just like word salad at this point. It could be a Trump speech for all I know. All I got, I mean, I get, I think they're completely incongruent words as well, which could be a Trump speech, like kangaroo, innocent, lemon juice in your eye. We're not at the lemon song yet, surely. And pistol over my black kettle before that high line is repeated a couple more times. So lyrically, I'm completely lost. I can't join these up to make some sort of coherent thoughts. All I'm hanging on is my previous sort of like grasps and desperate sort of guesses. I did have a thought that the black kettle may refer to the phrase pot calling the kettle black. I don't know if that's something that you say in the States.
It is. It is very much
Oh,
so.
it is. All right.
It sounds
cool.
like we've got some sayings, though, that might not be translated over there, which has led to some of your confusion, particularly the kangaroo. Like the phrase kangaroo court isn't something
Yes.
that gets bandied around. Okay, well then that's its usage here. Spoiler alert.
So again, we're being all judgy. And kangaroo court is obviously something that jumps up to go to garner instant justice, usually without being thought through and usually wrong as well.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, okay, got that. So the next verse I hear, "Wave your finger again," and fucking hypocrite,
Yep.
which again, and then we get this kangaroo lemon juice lines repeated. And I think I said right at the end of the reaction, to be fair, he does repeat the lines quite a lot, but with everything else that's going on, I still
Yeah, it's
making that.
understandable. There's a lot
He
happening.
could he could repeat it until the end of time, and I probably wouldn't get it unless it's printed out in front of me. But there you go. Musically, at this point, it's all very open sounded. There's a lot of space in between the various elements, the percussion, the dirty bass, and the heavy riffage from the guitar. And it does, and I may regret saying this, but well, I don't actually. It does seem to be following a standard 4/4 beat as well. There's no,
Mm.
you know, and I'm sure like before, there does be people coming and saying, you must have been saying you can't count. This is 12, 7, 8, 42, 65, whatever. It sounded like 4/4 to me. So bollocks to you.
Must have been high, John.
So we get a change in guitar attitude after this verse. It becomes much more what I would call a standard metal riff, almost old school.
Mhm.
And then it drops down to a weird section with these eerie guitar noises. And it kind of reminds me of, and this is a thing that triggers in my head, I don't think it's nothing to do with the song, but that sort of wailing sound, it always makes me think of the scene of a battle afterwards, when there's just smoke and a few guys slowly bleeding to death and wailing. That's the sort of scenario it gets put into my mind from these sort of wailing, quiet, noisy bits. And then at this point, the drums kick in and become a bit more militaristic as well. Again, it may be my perception of it, but that's how I heard it. We get a couple more lines from Maynard, and then we go into a very chugging sort of metal galloping phrase, which again has a bit of an old school, almost like something like Iron Maiden would do, that same sort of attitude, not exactly the same sound, but that sort of same galloping metal sound. It has a pounding nature to it, and actually this builds and stretches out for a pause before Maynard comes back with something about liar, lawyer, mirror for you. What's the difference? I was quite proud I caught that, if it's right. Again, this then now makes sense now. The kangaroo lemon juice, I must get the recipe. But the liar lawyer relates to kangaroo court. I get that. We then get this final strangulated cry from Maynard as he finishes the line. I think it must be another, it must be out of your head or out of your mind. And it extends like an accusatory finger pointing over the final chugs and the final cymbal splash. So yeah, if I'm honest, musically, this did less for me than the intricacies of writing two, which I think of all the Tools, the Tool songs you've given me now is my favourite, and the weird sort of trip of the two songs of Parabola. So that was the bit I didn't enjoy as much, the more heavy, traditional heavy metal sounding guitar to it.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked all the sort of little effects and little tweaks and stuff from the guitar, and which gave it texture throughout.
Yeah.
I did like the dynamics of it as well, and it was interesting, although I couldn't understand it as well as the others, but I found it intriguing. So not a complete write-off by any means, but not quite up there with the other two, I'd say, in
That's
terms
fair.
of my tastes.
Yeah, and I knew that this from a musical standpoint, while there are some really interesting stuff that's happening in this song musically, and I think you are aware of that, it does present in the most traditional, as when we're talking about Tool, as close to accessible metal as you're probably going to get from a lot of their stuff. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Oh, the one thing I forgot to put down on here, which I wanted to mention, is I should memorize the members of this band, but the drummer, as I've said many times, I'm a big fan of. I think he did a really good job here. He wasn't quite as brilliant as normal, so there wasn't that flashy. There's a few good fills and everything, but he just did a really good job. But I think the guitar was the dominating force in this song, in particular.
Yeah, I could say
I've
that
always enjoyed the drummer on this band though, and it's really good.
Yeah, Danny Carey's no joke. I would say that I to some degree agree with you about Adam Jones' guitar, But for me, it's in this track, it's this idea of bringing swinging bass to metal that Chancellor brings to the table that is so odd. And the one thing that's truly musically against the grain when it comes to metal music, you don't have this swingy funk to a lot of the bass work you hear in metal music, which is what I loved about. Well, it's just one of the things musically I love about this track. But go on. It looks like you have another point.
Yeah, it's just when you say that, this sort of bass sound is not dissimilar in a way to some of Incubus. And what I thought of Incubus before you gave Incubus to me to listen to, which
Hmm.
is more on the metal side of them,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
new metal side. And they have this similar bass sound, I would say, in some of their stuff as
Yes.
this.
Yeah, especially their earlier funk metal
Yeah.
oddity stuff that we've seen off like the Science album and things like that. Yeah, I would totally agree with you. Dirk Lance is another interesting bass player. So yeah, let's jump into this. So having already covered the band, as we've alluded to a couple times here, in past episodes dedicated to Writing Two and Parable/Parabola, I'll endeavor to avoid repeating much of the same information about them and this album. 10,000 Days, since Right on 2 features on it as well. Though I do think it's worthy, as, for John's edification, to go over the band members. We've got Maynard James Keenan on vocals, guitarist Adam Jones, drummer Danny Carey, fucking amazing, and bassist Justin Chancellor, who replaced founding member Paul Diamore in 1995. So this track, The Pot, is the fifth track on the band's fourth album, 2006's 10,000 Days, and it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart with the first week sales of 564,000 copies, so over 500,000 units moved in a week. The album was awarded double platinum certification and status by both the RIAA and the RMNZ, which I think is the New Zealand equivalent. It was also certified platinum in both Australia and Canada, and gold in Belgium, Germany, Ireland, Poland, and the United Kingdom. The album spawned three top 10 rock singles: Vicarious, The Pot, and Jambi. The Pot was released as a promotional single in advance of the album's release, and it became Tool's first #1 song, topping the Billboard mainstream rock chart in 2007. It also received a Grammy nomination for Best Hard Rock Performance in 2008. The track is primarily written in 4/4 time. I wanted to make sure I got this in here. Although it has a very syncopated, funky feel that can sound deceptive. The main riff and verse groove fit into a standard 4/4 beat structure, but it is noted for using polymeter, where the bass and the guitar parts create rhythmic tension against that 4/4 drum beat. So Nick Coven of Drowned in Sound reviewed the album and noted of this track: on past releases, Chancellor's bass snapped in time with the rhythm. Here it curls around the beat, adding a hip-shaking breakdown, which is guaranteed to light up the mosh pits at the forthcoming live dates. Writing for Medium in 2018, and this article is really interesting. I don't have the time to quote it all, but I certainly wish I do, or that you cared enough to listen. But writing for Medium in 2018, CB Robertson published an article titled "The Pot: An Analysis," and in it he offered up the following: the time has come to go over perhaps my favorite lyrical masterpiece, mine too, CB, The Pot by Tool, an almost Shakespearean mixture of vulgarity and high vocabulary, peppered with double entendres and all wrapped around an unmistakably clear and serious thrust. The song presents the heights of what well-written song lyrics can do. So, with those lyrics or pardon me, those lofty plaudits in mind, let's dig into these lyrics. Who are you to wave your finger? You must have been out your head. I hold deep in muddy waters. You practically raised the dead. And even that line, "you practically raised the dead," has some, as you mentioned earlier during this stanza, some odd religious a connotation with the raising of the dead. You know what I mean? Only the most religious could truly buy into the concept of that. Um, and so it's almost like I hold deep in muddy water, you believer in these things, you religious individual. Um, Rob the grave to snow the cradle, then burn the evidence down. Soapbox, house of cards and glass, so don't go tossing your stones around. So even that, the tossing your stones around, there's this double entendre of like throwing rocks at glass houses or from a glass house, but also being Billy Big Balls, throwing your unsolicited opinion about matters above your scope, you know, and so there's that. Even rob the grave to snow the cradle. It's like preying on two opposite ends of the spectrum but equally vulnerable classes, the incredibly young or the incredibly old. And then you use the term snow, which rarely gets used in a verb form unless you're talking about actual snowfall, like it's snowing. And you follow that up with burn the evidence down. Two antithetical things with snow and burn, which is derived oftentimes from fire or whatever. So I just super clever, and every bit of thought went into each line that he penned for this track. You must have been high. You must have been high. You must have been foot in mouth and head up asshole. What you talking about? Difficult to dance around this one till you pull it out, boy. You must have been so high. You must have been so high. Steal, borrow, reefer. Now it's refer, but he's pronouncing it in a way that's again like the term for pot. Steal, borrow, reefer, save your shady inference. Kangaroo done hung the juror with the innocent. Now your weeping shades of cozened indigo got lemon juice up in your eye. So false tears, you know, these and lemon juice being like this way to feign tears, though it not being through an emotional state, rather through a physical one. Um, Indigo, lemon, two shades of different colors. I just love it. When you pissed all over my black kettle, you must have been high, high. So yeah, there is this pot calling the kettle black thing going on there. You must have been high, high. Who are you to wave your finger, so full of it? Eyeballs deep in muddy waters, fucking hypocrite. Liar, lawyer, mirror, show me. What's the difference? Kangaroo done hung the guilty with the innocent. Now your weeping shades of cozened indigo got lemon juice up in your eye. When you pissed all over my black kettle, you must have been. So who are you to wave your finger? Who are you to wave your fatty fingers at me? You must have been out your mind, weeping shades of indigo, trapped without a reason, weeping shades of indigo. Liar, lawyer, mirror for you. What's the difference? Kangaroo be stoned. He's guilty as the government. Now your weeping shades of cozen indigo got lemon juice up in your eye. Now when you pissed all over my black kettle, you must have been high, 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 high. Eyeballs deep in muddy waters. Your balls deep in muddy waters. Ganja, please. You must be out your mind. But yeah, and it's also a plea like ganja, please, like all of this over weed. You know what I mean? In the world of you know, mandatory minimum sentences for, you know, petty drug possession charges, throwing people in for you know, a preset determined amount of time before the intricacies of the case is even heard, I think is something that is under the microscope here as well. So yeah, the Pot by Tool is a searing critique of hypocrisy and judgment, where Maynard James Keenan's vocals cut through layers of self-righteousness, revealing the absurdity of those who cast blame from their own flawed positions. The song's narrative unfolds like a distorted courtroom drama, where the accuser's own wrongdoings are exposed, highlighting the irony of their condemnation. So, through unsettling imagery, double entendre abound, and metaphorical language, Tool crafts a visceral experience, compelling listeners to confront the uncomfortable realities of human fallibility and the cynical nature of blame, which can leave the listener questioning the validity of self appointed moral authorities. So, yes, very anti-establishment, very what you guys would say to the rule setters and the, adjudicators and the writers of laws, these litigators and so forth. So, just I love this track. Go on, John.
Also struck me that another meaning of the pot, which is probably why people act in this way, the pot as in the collection of money or prize in a
Yeah,
poker match. So
yeah,
the pot
exactly.
is what you gain from all of this action and this
Yeah, the pot
hypocrisy.
becomes richer when you have things like mandatory minimum sentences and fines out of the ass over a fucking plant that grows in the ground, has been around as long as us. It's like very, very interesting stuff. And yeah, he's not afraid to shed a spotlight on that for sure. So, yeah, this is one of those songs where, and it's wild to think about because you've got bongos and you got the swinging bass and you've got these interesting guitar burbles throughout and all this stuff. But for Tool, this is one of those ones where the lyrics mean more to me and I think are more paramount than the music, even though I really do enjoy the music in this track. I just think this is probably one of Maynard's best lyrical and even vocal deliveries as he starts off in that high register that many probably when they heard it for the first time weren't ready for from him. So yeah, I just think he shines on this track by them. So parabola is like all eyes on Danny, right? Like in that track, because he's just killing it on the drums. For me, this is like Maynard, then Chancellor and Jones, which is to take nothing away from Danny because he does a really good job, but it's 4/4, it's fairly cut and dry, and they're kind of doing things around him this go around rather than the other way around. So thanks for giving this a go, giving this your honest thought, your best attempt at discerning all those lyrics. I don't blame you. There's a lot to sift through with this one. So appreciate your time, John, and your opinion as always.
No problem at all.
Guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track, The Pot by Tool. And feel free to give us any other suggestions, maybe from these guys or any other Maynard vehicle that you would like John to check out on a future Friday episode. If you're just tuning in, Fridays are dedicated to listener requests. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we exchange, but Friday is always going to be dedicated to songs you offer up, so long as at least one of us is not familiar with it so that they can be the listener to that track, the reactor, if you will. But yeah, all that out of the way, please like, share, and subscribe if you'd be so kind, and hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.